folks out in Zoom land, give me a hand signal or something if you can hear and see before we get going. Yay.
Yeah, all
Thank
right.
you.
All right, we're good on your end, Cliff?
To stop my video.
There we go. Yep.
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
Great, we're in business. Awesome, thanks, Dylan. All right, good evening. This meeting of the Bedford Public Schools School Committee is called to order at 7:02 p.m. It is Tuesday, June 9th. We'll start with a roll call vote. Wendy?
Here.
Sheila?
Here.
I'm here. That's three. We do have a quorum tonight. Brad will be coming in shortly, and I believe Angel is going to be calling in soon as well. So we'll make sure to note that when they do come in to join our meeting for the minutes. We do have remote participants. We have confirmed that they can in fact hear us. And yeah, we'll get going on our agenda. So starting with public comment this evening, as a reminder, the public is invited to comment during this part of the meeting in accordance with Bedford Public Schools Policy BEDH. Please say your name and full address for the record and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Once the public comment period closes, members of the public will not be able to make comments or address questions to any speakers or members of the committee. We ask that you refrain from using the chat or Q&A functions in Zoom after the public comment section has closed. So we'll start in the room. Is anyone in the room tonight wishing to provide public comment? Okay. Is there anyone online? Please raise your virtual hand if there's anyone joining us remotely wishing to provide public comment. We'll let it sit for a few seconds. Anything?
Not that I can see.
All right. Is there someone coming in? All right. Brad Morrison is joining the meeting.
At
7:03 p.m. All right. Close.
That's quite a welcome.
I'm announcing it for the minutes. Seeing no public comment this evening, we'll close the public comment period. Moving along to our first agenda item, it is our consent agenda and vote. Superintendent Schwong.
So standard minutes from your last meeting. I did place the acceptable use of technology policy for both staff and students on the consent agenda because the changes that were made were quite minor, but they did address the concerns that were raised by the committee and were cleared by legal counsel. The explanation is in the memo. There are gifts of substances for Millipore, the best PTO, and an anonymous donation. For Women in Science, new audio equipment at the Lane Elementary School and the Lane Science Center respectively. And there's a personnel report included for information that doesn't require a vote. And I think I actually did not include the case and lab information. My apologies.
All items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the committee so requests, in which event the item will be considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. We'll go around once to see if anyone would like to pull anything off the consent agenda for discussion. Wendy? Nope. Sheila? No. Brad?
No, thank you.
I'm a no as well. So we will go ahead to a vote. May I hear a motion that the school committee approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second. Brad has moved. Sheila has seconded. Roll call vote. Wendy?
Yes.
Sheila?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
I'm a yes. 4-0 to 0. The motion passes. All right. Moving on to our next agenda item. It's the Be Seen, Be Safe presentation. So Superintendent Schwong.
Yes, we have an entrepreneur student, Rima, right? Yeah. Rima Mehendale, who reached out, I think via member Carlton, to share about an initiative that she's been spearheading, a student-led initiative around safety, pedestrian safety in particular. As many of you know, that has been a topic around town and actually is something we're addressing through the district-wide handbook, which is the next agenda item. But she will have specific information about this particular initiative, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Rima. I'm a 7th grader at the JGMS, and I'm the founder of Be Seen, Be Safe. Be Seen, Be Safe is a nonprofit. Our goal is that we want to make our streets safer by giving out free reflective gear to everybody in our community. I'm excited to show you what we've done so far and share our mission with you tonight. I started this initiative because I noticed a rise in accidents in our community and I wanted to take action. I started brainstorming ways I could help, and that's how this project was created. Our dream is a world where no walker, biker, or pet is invisible after dark. To do that, we focus on 3 main areas: handing out free reflective gear to as many people as possible, teaching families about safety, and setting up a model so people in other towns can start their own chapters too. Next slide, please. Sorry.
That's okay.
And the next one too. Okay. So why is reflective gear so important? When it gets dark outside, walkers, runners, and kids on bikes basically become invisible to drivers. If you're wearing dark clothes, a driver can only see you from about 80 feet away. That gives them almost no time to react or stop. But if you're wearing reflective gear, a driver can see you from up to 500 feet away. That makes you 6 times more visible, which can basically save your life. Next slide, please. We didn't just want to talk about the problem, I wanted to take action. Since we started, we officially became a registered 501c3 public charity. We've also built our website, started our Instagram page to spread awareness, and bought our very first batch of reflective gear. We've already started handing it out around town and are talking to partners to help us do even more. Next slide, please. We aren't doing this alone. The community has really stepped up to support us. We raised over $1,000 through donations and partnerships. We also partnered with the Bedford Police Department and the Rotary Club, our very first organizational partner. I want to thank Officer Bricky. She's been my biggest support and mentor since the beginning. I'm so grateful to everyone who has helped us get started. Next slide, please. We also have a lot of plans for the future. Next, we want to expand and get free reflective gear to every Bedford school and community center. We also will be reaching out to local businesses to help fundraise so the gear stays free for everyone. But it's not just about passing out gear. We want to work with schools on quick safety lessons, host fun community events, and create a model so other people in towns can launch this. Next slide, please. There are a lot of ways we can all work together to spread the word and make sure everyone in our community is safe. Some of the things we hope to do include holding gear drives and putting up safety posters in schools, sharing quick reminders about nighttime safety during health class, PE, or advisory or homeroom, hosting community events and doing free gear giveaways for families, getting other people involved who want to volunteer and help out. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for your time and listening to my presentation. You can see our website and social media on the screen if you'd like to connect or check out what we're doing. I'd love to hear your thoughts, ideas, or answer any questions you have for me.
Thank you, Rama. That was terrific. We'll go around, starting with you, Wendy.
This was something that is so important for our family because my kids love to ride their bikes, and making sure that they're visible to the community is really good. The website looked awesome. I was so impressed with it. If you guys haven't checked it out, it looks so professional and it's very easy to read, and it's just wonderful. So thank you for doing this, and I hope you're registered for Bedford Day.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. So thank you for doing this and for reaching out about this.
Here's the website, just in case you're.
It looks so cool.
It's great. Great. Thank you, Sheila.
First of all, thank you for presenting to us, but more importantly, thank you for spearheading this initiative. And it's just really impressive, just especially like where you are in school and your age, that you're really inspired by trying to make change and help people, and that you're working with community partners, and that's just fantastic because it is important. You're correct, we have lost some community members in the last couple of years. And that's just, it's really hard to process, right? And if we can do anything to prevent that proactively through education, through gear, through fundraising, through community partnerships, all of that is fantastic. So thank you for taking on that role in our community and helping all of us think a little bit more about that. And happy to help and support you however we can.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sheila. Brad.
Thank you and congratulations on everything you've done so far. I especially like the high visibility theme on your website, so that's quite appropriate for that radiant color. You talked about we've done this or helping us to get started, so I'm curious to know who else has been involved in this with you.
So my parents have supported me a lot, and also the police department and the Rotary Club partner with us in a lot of stuff.
Do you have any other students working on it with you?
Not currently, but I hope to expand it.
Okay, great. Well, good luck with that. All right, congratulations. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you. This was excellent. Like Brad said, the website's awesome. I follow your Instagram account, so to put a plug in for that. This is really great. I also particularly like the fact that you were talking about youth leadership because I think that's something we really try to stress in our schools, and you're walking the walk, so that's very cool. So these are the best kinds of presentations we get, in my opinion, are students presenting to us. So this is one of the things I look forward to most sitting on this side. So thank you. Do you have any questions for us or any suggestions on how we could help support your efforts?
I do want to incorporate more like nighttime visibility and night safety into like health class and PE. So I was really hoping maybe we could do that.
Well, we can certainly set up a meeting with our wellness director who oversees the curriculum and our assistant superintendent for teaching and learning and Principal Artunian back there. So let's talk.
Yeah,
Thank
great.
you.
Well,
All right,
thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. All right. Well, that's great. We'll move on to our next agenda item. That is the district-wide handbook, second read and vote. Superintendent Schwung.
Yes. So in keeping with the theme, the district handbook is one of the ways that we try to keep our community safe with sort of the outline of procedures. One of the things, as you may recall, that we've clarified is safety around operation of e-bikes on school property. That is something that is now more consistent. The important things for you to know since our first read is that the key part of what the school committee has purview over is the code of conduct, which was revised to reflect a more restorative approach. There were no changes requested nor made in that section since the first read. The main substantive change was an additional update to the bullying prevention and intervention plan in consultation with our attorneys. We took the opportunity to make sure that it was fully compliant. Given its length, we removed it from the body of the of the handbook and put it into the appendix so it is clear and stands alone. All the other changes were pretty minor in terms of language or making sure that names and phone numbers were accurate. I do want to thank Wendy Carlton for her very close read of the handbook, and I think it's particularly helpful because Wendy will have kids in all 4 of our schools, including our 5th school, if you want to call it that, our preschool program next year. So she has the lens that we're seeking in terms of consistency for the district. I do want to be explicit about the approval process, and we did have an in-depth conversation with our attorneys about making sure that it's clear what the purview of the committee is per our policy. I do excerpt the relevant portion from the policy CHCA, which dictates the approval handbooks for the district, which explicitly states that the school committee approval is required for any handbooks that pertain to the code of conduct, which obviously this one does. And separate from our policy, but according to state law and regulations, the school committee also must approve the bullying prevention and intervention plan. So I am in the draft motion asking explicitly for your approval of those portions, but also to make explicit acknowledgement of the rest of the policy, which does delegate to the superintendent approval of any other portions of handbooks that don't address the code of conduct. I anticipate that we will continue to make some technical adjustments over the summer to make sure it is fully ready and formatted for the fall. In particular, I did update I think you all last time, or maybe not, but I'll be updating you now about some changes to the advisory structure at the high school. We want to work with incoming Principal Camaro on making sure that works, that schedule is accurately reflected before we update the handbook. The version that you have in your shared drive notes some of these changes that will be made. One of the other ones is happening concurrently tonight, which is the acceptable use policy, which you just approved, which I couldn't necessarily insert because I had to wait till it was approved. So we'll obviously insert the actual approved acceptable use policy into the handbook. With that, I turn it over to you for discussion and questions.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll start with you, Wendy.
I did read over it thoroughly because I felt like it was really important to know as how to find stuff. So thank you for reading through all of my comments. I felt there was a lot to it, but You answered my questions and clarified stuff, so thank you for doing that. And I like that the appendix has the bullying portion, so thank you for all of your hard work on that and bringing it to the table and everything. I don't have any questions after reading through it thoroughly.
Thank you. Sheila.
Yeah,
Actually,
thank,
no, I'm sorry. Did Angel sign on yet? I just want to make
Oh,
sure we don't miss
Yes.
him in case.
I don't see
Sorry,
him
Sheila.
yet.
Yeah, okay. Okay, back to Sheila.
yeah, thank you. I appreciated our first read of it, subsequently went through it, didn't find anything specific. I wanted to thank Wendy for all of hers, and it's great that you mentioned note here, because you have kids in all the schools, so I think I appreciate your perspective reading it from all of the parent viewpoints of all the schools. And I think, the language and the intent is the right tone for what we're trying to achieve. And, we'll see how it goes next year. And obviously, if we need to make modifications, we can, but I think this is a good structure to start with, and in bringing better sort of communication continuity to sort of us as a district. So no additional questions.
Great, thank you. Brad.
So thank you, Cliff, thank you, Wendy, thank you to all of us for reading it. The only question I have is, Cliff, have you given any thought to the sort of process for ongoing review and updating of this on an annual basis, or
Yes.
whatever periodicity is appropriate?
So I anticipate we will leverage the school councils to review updates. I'm sure we will
Because
discover.
now, I guess the essence of my question, sorry, is that, now that we have one, it's not uniquely one principal or whatever. So,
Right,
yeah.
right. I mean, the part that I feel I sleep better at night now is that all of the required legal language is in one document and consistent. Over the past several years, I've had quite a bit of agita about the fact that we present legally differently. Some things are updated, and I try to wrangle every summer. But now we have one set of legal language. And that makes it a lot easier to update if something changes. Like, for example, if the cell phone policy, the statewide ban on cell phones happens, I'll know that we'll update it for the whole district. Another example is the e-bike language is now district-wide instead of, it was in the lane handbook, but it wasn't in the JGMS handbook. So does that mean it can be operated in a lane but not at JGMS? I mean, vice versa. So, so we'll be able to update it. I think we'll do some sort of, check-in in the fall after it's issued, where parents are signing off on pieces of it, and we'll probably get some feedback then. And then I think in the spring, we'll take it back to the councils.
Okay.
I may not need to bring it back to the committee for a formal approval if the code of conduct stays the same, but I'll definitely update the committee either way.
Good, okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. A couple quick questions, Cliff, and one is just a clarifying question. Within the code of conduct, we have the applicability of the code of conduct section. And I think it's just important to note that this is not only during the school day, but to clarify, it also is on school property generally,
Yes.
it's before school, it's after school,
Yes.
and that would also apply to this new ban on e-bikes and e-scooters
Yes.
that's going into effect.
Yep.
Okay.
That is something that Principal Hartunian knows very well. Like, if something happens out of school hours, off-site, but impacts the environment in the school, there is purview for the school to have to, deal with it. So, yes.
And when does that go into effect? Like, if this new handbook is voted on tonight, does that ban start tonight, or does that ban start at the start of the next school year?
I mean, I think technically this is a 2026, 2027 handbook, but there is some similar language in the lane handbook as we speak. And I think it's within my discretion to say that it's in effect even outside of the handbook. So I would say that we are working with facilities on signage, and we'll have to talk to the police department about an approach to enforcement. I'm not sure if we will aggressively enforce for the rest of the year, but it is something we'll be prepared to do in the fall, because there have been incidents that are safety hazards.
Sure. And then just, not involving the e-bikes, but just generally, this also applies to sports teams that travel
Yes.
on sport buses to away
Yes.
games, meets. It's the conduct while they're at away games
Yes.
as well. Okay.
Yes.
And then last thing, and it's just kind of following up on what Brad said, I know you were saying that, we're giving you this, not giving you, we're just voting on and acknowledging that you have this approval ability to to modify items outside of our purview of the code of conduct. Could we make it an annual agenda item, just kind of a brief overview
Yeah.
of what has been changed?
Yeah.
Not grammatical,
Yes,
but like
yes.
anything
Substantive,
substantive that
yes.
actually is just,
I'm-
I don't know how others feel, I would
Yeah.
like a annual
I'm
end of the year update. Just
I mean, as you know, at least for the past 2 years, we would do that for both the JGMS and BHS handbooks. We probably over approved in the sense that in the past 2 years, it wasn't necessarily code of conduct related, but either way, I think the substantive update is a good practice for us, especially since it's district wide. So I'll work it into the standard, like BHS program of study, this,
Perfect.
yeah.
Okay, great, but nothing else. Oh,
Can
Brad,
I
yes.
just tweak that and say, I'm not convinced it should be the end of the year, we don't want everything at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So you might
Yeah.
wanna smooth
Like
that out.
maybe the
to
penultimate
some-
meeting.
Yeah, but sometime.
Great. That said, may I hear a motion that in accordance with school committee policy CHCA, the school committee approves the code of conduct section of the unified district-wide student handbook as presented. As required by law, the school committee also approves the bullying prevention and intervention plan appendix of the handbook. The school committee acknowledges that approval of other portions of the handbook can be made by the superintendent in accordance with policy CHCA. So moved.
Second.
Sheila has moved, Brad has seconded, roll call vote, Wendy,
Yes.
Sheila,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
I'm a yes, 4-0, the motion passes. Alright. Moving on along. The next agenda item is the 2026-2027 JGMS Technology Homework and Student Organization Initiative. That's Superintendent Schwang, Donna Clements, Director of Technology and Library Media, and JGMS Principal John Hartunian.
So Donna is online, and Principal Hartunian is here. I want to first start with appreciation for the active stakeholder engagement on this issue. As we talked about at the last meeting, various parents had begun expressing concern about this issue as early as this time last year and throughout the fall. As you heard at the last meeting, that captured a lot of the concern and sentiments of the some parts of the parent community. As I promised, we dug in pretty deeply with the team, which includes the program directors, the team leaders at JGMS, and teachers. That was really key to really understand what the problems were that we were trying to address and what the potential solutions were in terms of what we can do in this short time frame. So I'm going to turn it over to Principal Hartunian to walk you through where we have landed in terms of what we plan to implement in the fall of 2026. But I do want to remind the committee and the community that we had always had a plan to turn our focus more specifically to technology over the course of the next school year, in conjunction with the revision of technology guidelines that will now accompany the now approved acceptable use of technology policy. So this is not the end of the discussion, this is the beginning. And last, I want to highlight, and Principal Hartunian will share this, that one thing that emerged from this conversation wasn't really directly related to technology. What became clear from a number of angles and stakeholders is that lack of consistency around communication, around homework expectations, really is part of what's driving this. Not knowing whether students need their Chromebook or not to do their homework, not knowing what the homework actually is, not knowing where to find where the homework actually is, really came to the fore as a sort of organizational and structural challenge that is sort of not necessarily about technology per se. So that was a unintended, but I think a big gain that we're going to have in terms of addressing that communication between school and home to support parents in terms of their support of their kids. But I will turn that over to John to share more extensively about the plan for our approach to this in the next school year.
Thanks, great, one second, John.
Might it be possible to get the Zoom people on the
Yes.
screen instead of us?
Yes, that's great.
Okay.
And Angel is on and
Call
he
them
needs to
Zoom
be
people.
Okay.
promoted.
Let me promote to
Sarah, I
panelists.
recognize for a minute.
Oh, sure, yes.
Do you know what time he signed on? Do we need to note that in the minutes?
I think he just signed on and
Yeah.
is being promoted now as a panelist.
Dylan, can you check to see if it's pinned, the select board?
Alright. And just so we're clear, Angel Pettit is joining us as a panelist at
Or
7:26 p.m.
Because it seems to be pinning the,
You're gonna get view maybe?
yeah, gallery view instead of,
Speaker? No.
How about thumbnail?
yep. Why is it not showing? Maybe Angel, do you want to talk? Maybe you will appear.
Can you hear me?
We
can hear
can.
ya.
So it has.
We got a little.
Yeah, but I don't. Do you remember last time if it showed the little squares?
It should
it
be
did.
able to show the like room view and then anyone that's presenter and pinned.
At least on my end, I can see that there's a Donna Clemens square and a Julie square, select boardroom, and then Cliff.
Oh, here we go. We're good now, Angel.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna also share the presentation. It's just taking a sec. Okay, there we go.
Right, all right, why don't you go to the next slide, please? All right, thanks, everybody. So what we want to do is we want to start just identifying the problem, or just at least confirming what the problems were. Because if we don't identify the problem, we don't know what we're trying to solve. So the first piece, problem that was identified was that removing technology completely from the educational programming is going to limit the rich educational experience our students deserve. However, students' unlimited access to technology on Chromebooks at home and at school was also considered something that we needed to fix. Parents feeling undermined by the level of technology allowed by the school versus what they allow at home emerged as a big problem. Kudos to parents who have started to limit the access to their technology on their phones. I'll say that, anecdotally at least, a lot less problems at home with kids and their phones coming into school. Still a little bit here and there. That was a real win. And I appreciate that parents have started to crack down on phones, at least limiting what they allow on them, whether or not they actually give them phones at all. So of course, the technology they have in school is undermining that. And then finally, as Cliff just pointed out, parents feeling underinformed around assignments, leaving them unable to support the healthy technology habits at home. So once we identified those problems, the conversation came to, all right, how are we going to solve those problems in a way that everybody feels heard and whole at the end of it, so we can continue doing the great work here in Bedford. Go ahead. All right, so the primary objectives of our solution was to preserve the instructional benefits of the one-to-one Chromebook program, giving parents meaningful control over the tech use at home, and tighten controls, norms, and expectations for technology use in school. Reestablishing a strong partnership with families around the use of technology in school, and then establishing consistent school-wide systems for homework communication and organization. Go ahead, Cliff. So if we talk about each piece, each one of those four objectives, we're not going to move away from the one-to-one. There are too many educational positives that educators felt outweighed the negatives. However, we are going to collect Chromebooks over the summer. We sent a message out this morning to parents and also in the morning bulletin about when that's going to happen. I think it's going to happen next week on Monday or Tuesday. It's designed to be a strategic break from the Chromebook. We don't assign things in the summer. They don't necessarily need them over the summer. And also a sense of it's not your Chromebook. This is a school's device. So we're going to remove those stickers. So if you're listening, your kid has stickers on their Chromebooks, that's something we're asking them to do so that we can, turn a new Chromebook back to them in the fall strategically. First day of school is not going to be the day they get their Chromebooks. In the past, our 7th and 8th graders would walk into school with Chromebook. That's not going to happen. We're going to get them to them when we're ready to give it. All right, parental control. So I talked about the undermining piece of it. Our kids, whether or not we use Chromebooks at home or not, they're going to go home with those Chromebooks and they have unlimited access to things. So we have piloted a parent portal called Lightspeed with parents who have children in the district or at least in the school.
And we actually expanded it, so we have other
Thank you,
parents.
okay. Which we found to be a successful pilot. Parents really appreciated what they could do, felt it was to be user-friendly, and felt like there was a true partnership there. Oh, there we go, I just talked about that. So we're gonna have a full rollout in the fall to all families, which is gonna take some time to get out there. Tightening technology in school. We have a really good cell phone policy at JGMS, to the point where we don't actually have a problem with kids using phones at the school. Kids and families, they know the consequences if they use their phone, have their phones on them in school, and parents are really supportive. It's really powerful when a parent says to a child, like, I'm not gonna get your phone, I'm not picking up your phone, you can get it tomorrow. Or they come get their kid's phone, but of course it becomes a parent-child conversation. So we've been successful at that, and I think if I could just skip to the third bullet, explicit expectations and consequences around student misuse in the school, and mirroring in some way our successful cell phone policy. If we can do it with our cell phones, we can do it with our computers. But then going up to the top bullet, limiting access to YouTube, games, Spotify. That's, our kids are finding ways in which, to distract themselves. And we are also cracking down and blocking YouTube and whatnot. However, we're talking specifically about maintaining an allow list in the future versus what we're currently doing, which is a block list. What is it that we're going to allow our children to see versus what are we going to block? And I think that's more manageable because there's infinite things we could block. However, there's limited things we can allow.
I want to just add an important caveat that this is maybe easier said than done. A lot of websites are dependent on other websites, and we are already finding we had to relax the block on YouTube because the block was too strong and didn't allow teacher-directed YouTube videos to play. So our tech team is working very diligently to effectuate this sort of allow list approach, but it's going to take some trial and error, some communication, some iterating, because technology is complicated in terms of how websites interact. So I just want to put that caveat out there because it's not as easy as just pressing a button.
Yes, throughout a school year, I develop and work, and I spend a lot more time with certain aspects of the leadership team or certain people in the leadership team. And over the last few months, there's been a lot of work with our technology team, understanding the complexities of just pressing a button and blocking something, because that's going to impact a lot of people in positive ways and negative ways, and we have to be very careful about it. Just recently, we are learning that Spotify is something that kids can use and access YouTube, right? So we're looking to address that as well. So go ahead, next one. Predictable homework expectations. So this is something that emerged, as Cliff said. Our parents don't, so I joke about this a lot, but it's also not a joke. I think we all, prior to the technology and the computers going home, you come home from school and your parents ask, hey, do you have homework? And if you're trying to get away with not doing homework, say, yeah, no homework. And I left my agenda book at home at school, and so I'm gonna go outside and play. And parents are like, oh, okay, I guess my kid's going outside to play. And parents are telling us it's the opposite. They're coming home saying, I have homework. I'm gonna go in my room and be on the Chromebook. And parents are struggling with being able to say, well, actually, you don't have homework. And I can look right here and I can see it. So we want to work and help parents in that way by making sure that they have access to what they need so that they can hold their kids accountable at home. So we've spoken with program directors and teachers, and we're working on standardizing Google Classroom norms. So for example, when are we posting homework by? Homework will be posted in Google Classroom by a specific time at the end of the day, for example, maybe 3 p.m. We want to just clarify what's the reasonable time to ensure everything is posted. I think it's safe to say most teachers would have it posted at some point throughout the day. Then a consistent due date, right? I don't think any teacher expects a kid to turn in their homework, at 11:58, or 12 a.m., right? But 11:59 p.m. was like the default setting. So a lot of times if you go into Google Classroom, you'll see at 11:59 it's due. Teachers don't expect kids to be working on homework 9, 10 o'clock at night. However, there are situations that put a student in a position to maybe check their assignment at 8 o'clock, 9:30 right before bed because they had an event that they had to go to. So we don't want to shut things down or make kids feel like they can't do work, or they want to wake up in the morning early and do their homework. Like those are positive skills that kids have. They're fresh in the morning and get up nice and early and get it done. So we felt like 7:30 a.m., beginning of school, that's when the bell rings to get to class, would make sense. So we'll confirm all that, but ultimately having some consistency there so that everything is seen the same no matter what. Clear, consistent naming conventions. Like, is it homework or is it just something to, like, is it just practice for something that's 3 days from now? Is it actually due? Is it not? And then a central location defining assignments. So I'm going to show you an example, like the Google Calendar, the Google Classroom Calendar is very clear for a student to see what is the homework. And if we're going to do that in a consistent way so that students all are seeing a similar model of homework. And of course, we're going to continue to use paper agendas, although not all of our students use the paper agendas. I'm working closely with the Parent Association to purchase what we need, not more, not less, and then also hold kids accountable, at least in 6th grade, to using those agendas early and often. I think at this point in the year, some kids are weaning themselves off of it. They've learned strategies around their Chromebook where they don't necessarily need to use the paper agenda. And of course, a select number of 7th and 8th graders, being our special ed population, or students who have particular needs, where we think executive functioning wise, it would be best to have both a paper agenda and be able to use their Chromebook. So we're going to still continue to teach that skill, at the same time recognizing not all students benefit from a paper agenda, but to start in 6th grade with one and start to learn how to use it and then decide, this is for me, and I'm going to keep using this type of paper agenda throughout my time here, or I've tried it, it's not for me, I found another way to manage my executive functioning. So this is an example of maybe what an assignment would be. So this would be an example if it's Monday and your kid comes home. Well, this isn't a good example because we would want to have no homework. So let's just say it's Tuesday night and you want to know what your child has to do for homework tonight. Well, the next morning on Wednesday, there's an assignment in blue. It's to complete a study guide because there's a test on Friday. The due date is 7:30 a.m. You know it's homework. That needs to be done. Mom, I have homework. Let me double check. Oh, yes, you do have homework, right? It's a study guide. And I also have to read the JGMS student handbook. This was actually, I made up a Google Classroom for a school committee. So it's like your homework is through the handbook. Anyway, so a parent could actually look at this and say, okay, how much time do you need to do the study guide? Let me see the study guide. About a half hour? Yep, okay. And then read the handbook, a couple, 10 pages. What do you have, about 15 minutes? Okay, you can have the Chromebook for 45 minutes. Pull up Lightspeed, open up the Chromebook for 45 minutes. They have 45 minutes to do their homework. To the extent that you want to give them more time or not is a conversation at home. Parents will have the ability to see what the homework is, confirm that they actually have it, provide enough time so that they can do the homework and only the homework. On the 11th, same thing. On Wednesday night, well, what's due tomorrow? Well, study for a test. Well, when's the test? Oh, in blue, the test is on Friday. So your homework is due on Thursday. You should walk into school the next day having studied for that test. I'm guessing there's going to be some maybe work in class around that test in preparation. And then come Friday, FYI, there's a test, right? So, and of course, in the green on Thursday, there's nothing due in that green class, right? There is no homework. And I think one thing that's really important is every class needs to be explicit. If there's homework, what is it? If there's no homework, then we're clear, none. Because it's very simple for a student to say there is no homework, or there is homework and they just didn't write it down. And now a parent's fighting with a child who is trying desperately to have access to a Chromebook that they don't need. So this is a way to tighten that control, partner up with our parents, and it's really just good for kids. It's good practice. So I think that that's really important. And of course, there's some get to know you questions that are due on Friday. So on Thursday night, this child has some work to do. And maybe the kid does the homework on Wednesday for Friday if that's an option. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So this is what it might look like. Go to the next slide. It's just some specifics. I talked about some naming conventions when I spoke earlier. If you'll notice on every assignment, it's clear, HW, right? So if every class is being clear that this is actually a homework assignment, this should be done, it's due on the 10th. And then of course, if you look on the 12th, there's a proper notice, right? Parent knows on Wednesday the 10th that there's a test on Friday, and everything sort of lines up in that way. So this is something that we've spoken about as a staff. We've agreed on some norms initially, but we're going to get together a little bit more I have a meeting tomorrow with some teachers, and then this summer we'll clarify some things, roll this out in the fall, and make sure our staff is trained, because we have implementation, which is the last slide. Some staff training to ensure alignment. We have to make sure we're clear on how we're going to align, and then as needed, make sure teachers who maybe aren't using Google Classroom as much because they're really sticking to the paper piece, start using it more consistently. And the ones that are using it, align specifically with each other. And then of course there's parent education and resources to ensure the partnership is strong, making sure that you understand actually how to view the child's calendar. And then of course curriculum around the proper use of device management to our students. As I said, we're not just going to hand it to them and say, here you go, right? We're going to make sure they understand the expectations, consequences for using it inappropriately, and routines in the classroom for, is today a day we're using Chromebooks, or is it today we're not using Chromebooks? And if it's not a Chromebook day, what do we do? If it is a Chromebook day, how do we do it in a way that's appropriate when we need it? So that's all work that we're going to have to roll out first couple days of school and prior to giving out the Chromebook.
Just want to add a few highlights in terms of, and I don't know if this discussion has progressed yet, but there has been some discussion about being clear also about what the homework requires the use of the Chromebook. And I don't know if that's an ongoing conversation, it's posted so you know, but it's a worksheet, right?
Yep.
So you need the Chromebook for that.
Yep.
So I think that's still an ongoing point of discussion. And on the parent education piece, we anticipate there will be multiple forms of support: in-person drop-in sessions, office hours, online Zoom sessions, on-demand calling, to make sure that parents know how to set up the Lightspeed portal and use it, as well as to view the Google Classroom calendar. So you can expect a lot of opportunities in that first month of school. And likely we'll try to pair that with the issuance of the Chromebook, right? So that parents are ready when the students are ready and parents are ready for when the Chromebook lands, about how we're expecting it to be used.
If I could just say one thing before questions, there's also conversation about possibly upgrading our Google Suite to the extent that's worth it or not. I know there's a trial that we will have access to, 60 days, 30 days, I don't remember exactly how many days. It doesn't make sense to start that trial now, right? So we don't want to overpromise, underdeliver. What we can say is a student's Google Classroom calendar, will you go back one, two, one more? Yeah. A student's Google Classroom calendar will look like this. And just like you have to say, I still ask your child, can you bring home your agenda book, right? And they have to physically hand you the agenda book. There's going to be, at the very bare minimum, an expectation the parent would say, can you just show me your Chromebook, open it up, right? Go to your Google Classroom calendar, show me, and we're done. Or even to the point where a parent actually has access to student's login and password and can log in from work. Because, parents are at work, kid comes home, I have homework, right? And you don't actually have the ability to look at their Chromebook, but if you can just quickly log in, take a peek, yes, you do have homework, and then change Lightspeed right then and there for their child for however many minutes you agree. That's something that can be done, right? Immediately, tomorrow, right, at all times. To the extent we can, this free sample works out to something we want to purchase, and it's user-friendly, and it gives you the information you need without having to take that step, is something we'll talk about in the fall, when we can test it.
Great. Thank you. Donna, I know you're online. Did you want to add anything? You don't have to, just before we.
Donna is on the call for questions, but
okay.
Yeah, but she
Perfect.
Yeah.
Just making sure, just in case. All right, great. Then we'll start with you, Wendy.
Okay, since I have a kid coming up to middle school and I already have a kid in middle school, I do have a lot of questions. So when you're talking about the Google Suite trial, what additional resources are you looking at with that?
So I'm not the best person to speak to that. However, I think just a parent's ability to have a view into some of the features of the Google Classroom calendar, for example, just straight up being able to see this,
Yeah.
right? Rather than asking a child to show it to you. They would expect us to pay for that. How necessary is it? How simple is it? those are some of the things that we're gonna look into. And we don't wanna purchase it until we actually know what it looks like and how it works.
So the reason why I'm asking, when you're talking about what they're doing, I know I get a daily summary for Landon, or for one of my kids, saying what he's supposed to do for homework or whatever. I think it's a daily summary, and that's at Lane. So is that? Do we have the capabilities?
So yes, I believe we have all those capabilities.
Okay.
To the extent that that is too cumbersome, we need to determine, right? Right now, I'm guessing if this is your fifth grader, it's one classroom. It's the teacher of record, right? And they're sending the assignments. Well, in middle school, you're gonna have 7 teachers of record in any given
Yeah.
day. So you don't need 7 different emails from 7 different Google Classrooms. I believe that is what we currently would have access to, which I don't want to put a parent through having to read 7 different emails. So if we can set it up where you get one email with a little summary of all, with just this calendar, that feels reasonable, right? I'm looking for that one email a day. It gives me a whole list of things that are due tomorrow or anything that's late, but it pulls all the classrooms together versus getting 7 different emails. Because right now, if I get even deeper, if you're a parent and you want to actually check your kid's homework, I'm guessing you could also go to the Google Calendar, but if we're not specifically posting everything to the calendar and we're posting it in the stream or an announcement, there's a variety of places. I have to check each classroom, each individual classroom, and that's a click here for math, a click here for science, a click here for social studies. And it's like, I got 3 kids at home, like I don't have time for this, right? I'd rather just check 3 different things for each kid. And that's what we're hoping will happen. But I can say that if every teacher specifically places their homework as an assignment in the Google Classroom calendar, not the Google calendar, Google Classroom calendar, it'll look like this, right? And everything will be there.
I think that would be really helpful. I feel like the middle school has had that, but I might be wrong, so I won't go down that rabbit.
And you might be right. What I want to do is
We're
make sure.
exploring
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why
whether
I
it's
was like-
worth enhancing or whether we actually haven't been using the full capabilities. So that's part of what we're doing this summer.
Yeah, that would be great. Like the calendar view, I would really like that because then I could just check it off real fast. And then I really like the homework expectations, the posting deadlines and due dates. I would love to see that done at the high school too, to be honest, but that's a whole different thing. Because that gives me, as a parent, I can go in and say, okay, it's 3 o'clock. I know all of your homework's been posted, but let's get it done or whatever. But if it's posted at 6 p.m., that's kind of hard. The consistency does matter. The other question, is Spotify allowed right now on the Chromebooks?
Currently, today, it was allowed. I'm just gathering a little bit more feedback, and I'm going to have to make a decision tomorrow, and we'll see how it goes. But it'll likely be.
Yeah, it'll likely be blocked.
Likely be blocked.
soon.
So if it's not blocked, there's a really good reason for it. But
Yeah.
I don't want to. I have to just double check my feedback chain that I've requested.
I know that you guys are going to be doing training and resources for families. I would, again, as a parent, I would love to have it sent before school starts. And then within that question, when are Chromebooks, do you guys have a timeline of when those will be issued
So
for the new year?
in the fall, we don't know yet. What we need to do this summer is create the staff training, student training, talk about when we're going to provide that training to the students. The staff, it's easy. It's the first couple of days of school. But for the students, they're going to come to school on the first day. They're going to meet their teachers. They're going to get their schedules. They're going to learn to walk around. And that's like the first day. That's a Wednesday. And then the Thursday, teachers are going to have things that are low tech, right? And part of that low tech is, hey, everybody, here's some expectations in my class. Here are the consistent expectations we have as a team, as a school, around Chromebook use. On, say, Friday or next Monday, you're going to get your Chromebook. And before you get your Chromebook, you need to do these things. So here's an assignment to show us that you understand what the rules are. And I'm just shooting from the hip here. Like I have to work that out, this summer with the leadership team at JGMS. and which includes our teachers that are part of that leadership team, and then roll it out to the teachers in the fall. Ask them, like, okay, guys, what's a reasonable time to educate these kids and train these students on their Chromebooks? Sixth grade may want a few extra days. Seventh and eighth grade maybe not need as many because they've already had it and they just need sort of a reset. But there's a line between waiting too long because there's teaching that needs to start. At the beginning of the year, it's not jumping right into science class. It's getting to know you and really just making sure the norms in the classroom are set, creating a class community. But after a few days, right, they're starting to get that, and you can start introducing some curriculum. So I have to engage the teachers in that conversation. So I can't say today it's going to be the first Friday of the.
No. I was trying to figure out if it was going to be before school started or after school
After.
started.
No, after.
After school starts, yes, yeah, for sure.
Okay. With the professional development for the teachers and staff, will that be required, or is that just, okay, good. It didn't seem
Yes.
clear to me, and I was like, I just wanted to make sure that was required. And then the digital citizen instruction, I'd like to hear more details about that later on, so I don't need to hear about that right now. I would note, like with the homework completion time, you talked about that, like this should take 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I know in the handbook, it kind of breaks it down. Sixth grade, you should be spending this much time, seventh and eighth grade and whatnot. I would really, for parents, I would really emphasize that at either back to school or in communications and everything. Because there are some students, I have a few of them, who are like, I just need to finish it. And it's going to take them 2 or 3 hours sometimes. So I think making sure that that's in there, especially with the homework systems.
So I want to make sure I touch upon that because I understand that concern, and it's interesting because if we've talked about putting a little like timer on it, like, okay, this assignment should take approximately 30 minutes. However, right, some kids it takes 15 or 10, and they actually did it really well. And the parents saying, well, how did you do that so quick? Like, really? You're done? Like, are you sure? And now they're fighting over, like, did you really actually put in the effort into that homework? We don't want that. And we also don't want kids spending 2 hours on homework. So, like, every teacher is going to have that conversation at back to school night. And if they don't, every parent who's concerned about it needs to email a teacher and ask, hey, look, like, just so I know, if my kid's doing homework and we're fighting it after the 30-minute mark, like, what do you want me to do? And our teachers are going to say to you, they need to stop. And I will talk to your kid in the morning, and I will tell them what the expectation is, and I'll make sure that me, the teacher, and the kid are all understanding what we expect, so that the next night, when the 30-minute mark hits, you're not fighting them. You're not fighting your child on, turn up, shut it down. You don't have to finish it. I've already spoken to the teacher. The teacher spoke with you. Hopefully that it ends the fighting and the arguing at home. And if it doesn't, right, then we have to think of another accommodation for the child, so that there's some healthy boundaries, right? An accommodation of the homework, maybe limiting the problem set, whatever that may be. But I think sometimes there just needs to be individual conversations and individual accommodations, so that we don't have to just blanket. Everybody gets 30 minutes and that's it, right? Because sometimes you need 45, and that's perfectly healthy for that child.
Thank you for answering
Yeah.
those. With the with Lightspeed, I love that we're providing access to everyone now, to all families. With that, will they also be able to see time spent on Chromebook while at school, or is it only at home?
Yeah, so it's at
Working
home
on it.
only, and I don't know if you want to touch upon it at school.
So we are working on the ability to use Lightspeed to try to track where and how long students are in school as well. There's going to be there's a technical aspect to that, and then there's a philosophical aspect to that has to be addressed, because parents don't get to come and be in school with their kids to see everything all the time. Part of being in a public school is understanding that there's a curriculum that's approved by this school committee. So I think there are going to have to be more discussions about whether or not parents should have access to see every single thing their kid did online in school. We're not sure we can technically do it yet, in terms of like they were on this website for 10 minutes and this website for 15 minutes. So the tech team is working out the technical aspects. And then I think there's gonna have to be a discussion about sort of what's appropriate to share at what level with public record requests and privacy and all that. I don't think it's necessarily a trivial matter.
If parents don't choose to use the portal, there will be protections in place or no?
I mean, if a parent doesn't choose to use the portal, I don't think, I'm not sure.
Just making sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
but-
need to. I believe that we talked about whether or not we could set things to just block everything and a parent has to open it up. But as I spoke about before, it's not that simple. So I think it's gonna have to be an educated decision. I think some kids and parents don't need it because they've developed norms and it's not an issue. Others do. But it's gonna be indeed a parent decision about how whether they want to use it. If they don't use it and they still want to complain about the Chromebook, I guess I'm not sure what to do about that.
Yeah.
You know, I'll say that, I mean, right now, our YouTube blocking and all that, like, those things are still at play at home. So, you know, the things that, I think as Cliff said, like, we had to open up a little bit, right, so that we could provide some of the educational pieces, right? And so now, you know, they might be able to play around a little bit in that area, but not nearly as wild west as it was prior to the blocking.
With the homework expectations, how will you guys know whether teachers are following the homework posting expectations? How will it be consistently monitored? I think that would be tough with a lot of
Well,
staff.
so our special educators brought this to our attention. They are feeling like, you know, as that parent with 5 kids who's got 3 different Google Classrooms, right? To 5 different Google Classrooms a night to look at is like pulling their hair out, right? Well, our special ed teachers have 5 kids in their classroom, and they have 5 different Google Classrooms to look at. And they're, you know, for the most part, they know what's happening because they're in those classes. You know, but they might be on different stages because A block is in a different stage than B block for whatever reason. And they're like, God, I just wish it was an easier. Like, I wish we were just consistent. So, I think they're going to have a window into it immediately. Yes. Now, to the extent our teachers, you know, can talk to each other and say, hey, look, like, you're making it hard for me. Can you do what we all agreed on, right? I think that hopefully should solve it for 90%.
Yeah.
Our colleagues talking. And our parents are going to, who are astute, are going to look on there and be like, you're not doing it. They may email me and complain, and then I would say, did you touch the teacher? And the teacher will get the feedback and fix it. Or maybe they email the teacher directly, which is what I prefer, and the teacher gets the feedback and fixes it. Hopefully, that is it.
There will be self-reinforcing, you know, through the special ed team and others who need to access, like the counselors maybe. Yeah. And it'll be an expectation of evaluation. So if this is a school-wide expectation and you're not doing it, just like any other thing, they will get feedback either from their supervisor or from John or Nick, and we will proceed accordingly. But we hope 95% of those problems will be addressed really quickly with standard feedback from parents or from colleagues. Now that we've set a clear expectation, it's going to be an expectation to be followed.
And I'm sure most will. And the ones that
not
don't,
concerned.
like I said, I think the gentle feedback they'll get from a colleague or a parent will be enough.
Yeah.
If not, then that's, as Cliff said, we'll have to be clear.
I think the coding will help quite a bit.
Yes.
I will let my colleagues have some questions. So I'm done. Thank you for answering all my
Yeah,
questions.
thank you. Good questions.
Thanks. I know Angel is going to be transitioning into this room in person shortly, so we're going to skip him for now and go to Sheila.
Sure, thanks. John, this was fantastic, and thanks to everyone that worked on this, which I think you rallied around this pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think it's great that you're keeping the one-to-one, but putting some better controls and expectations across the group. I thought you brought up a good point just on the timing of homework, and just this is more of a community reminder, right? We have learners of all different types, so it's very hard. I think it's good to provide an estimate, right? Like, it may typically take 20 minutes for this homework assignment. It could take less time or more time, right? And making sure parents that, especially kids in special education, right? If they get time and a half on tests or assessments, they really get time and a half on assignments too. The parents probably know that, right? There are kids that see 20 problems, and teachers, I think, have been fantastic in the district that have not only tried to teach the students that, but the parents too, being like, look, there could be 20 problems. I only want you to do 10. I want you to do the odd number problems, right? After 30 minutes, that's good enough. It's reinforcement.
Yep.
And I think the teachers do a really good job of that. I think there's probably additional education for families at home to remind them of that, right? And to help them coach their children through that.
Right.
Because there's only so much you can do on that, right? So I think there's an opportunity for parents to internalize that and not have their kids working on a math worksheet for 2 hours when it was meant just for some additional practice.
That's a good point, and I can highlight that in parent bulletins as well, just so
Yeah.
they're hearing it from me directly. I'm confident they're hearing it from the teachers, or at least I'm confident the teachers are saying it,
Right.
to the extent that the parent is hearing it in the moment amongst all the other things they're hearing. So it's important to reinforce
Yeah,
that.
and at least in my experience, the teachers have been always very clear about that.
Right.
They never are expecting
Yes.
any student, or especially someone in special ed, to be like going at it for 2 hours on a math worksheet. Like that's not what
Absolutely.
anyone's doing. But I think it's good for parents to help that. And if their kids are like, I see 20 problems, I have to do them all. It's a great opportunity for parents to be aligned with the school and be like, no, your teacher said this. Like this is okay, right? We're telling you this is okay. I was curious to see, since you've blocked YouTube, how are things going? Like, what is the feedback from teachers and the vibe in the classroom?
You know, the vibe is good. I mean, when we first got blocked, I asked, like, what's the vibe, and I was waiting, right? And, there was a few glitches that we had to work through, but teachers understood the purpose of it. Email tech, cleaned up those glitches. So I think for the teachers, it's business as usual, right? They made a few adjustments, and, there was a day maybe where it didn't work, and we've moved on. We've moved past that.
Yeah.
It's funny. My barometer is the emails I've gotten from kids, like, "What are you doing to us?" And I'm like, "All right, well, I guess that's working." So I think it was good timing. I'd like to say that when I was leaving the building, I saw less kids on their Chromebooks. I think unfortunately this happened at a time when sports were sort of ending, activities after school were ending. So I didn't leave. I leave the building to the gym area, so I always walk past kids waiting for their parents or whatever, and fully admit, like, a lot of Chromebook use. They weren't doing their homework. So I think that for the most part, there's just less. Now, of course, they found other ways, so we're now learning how to manage it, and we'll just continue to do it. It hasn't stopped them from trying.
Yeah.
I'd say that much.
Well, and I'm hoping that there's maybe less distractions in the classrooms, so it's better for the teachers, right? So they're not, the lessons that they're trying to teach are actually getting through versus being distracted by other things.
Yeah, and I think right now, because it's like creating a whole new classroom norms around like where the Chromebooks go if it's a Chromebook day versus a non-Chromebook day and all those things. It's not going to get the gains we're looking for at this point.
Yeah.
I think, but having those conversations in the fall, we're really going to see it much more.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to note, I know that Brad and others on the committee and maybe some in the audience will appreciate this. We, Donna Clements and to two instructional coaches did develop what we're calling a student distractibility survey. So I'm going to be asking all staff to take it before the end of the year as a baseline. Very simple 1 to 2 minute survey about their perception of how distracted students are, so that we can re-administer it next year to see if if it's working. Not a super scientific, but a sort of dipstick test in terms of the sense of our educators about whether or not this is improved. So hopefully we'll have some data to share in the fall in terms of whether or not some of what we've done has helped. And we specifically are going to instruct GHM's educators to think pre-block, just in terms of what the distractibility level was, and then in the fall, obviously, reassess. So.
I just want to clarify, Angel is now here with us, 8:06 p.m. It's not pack light, it's for my phone tonight.
And just one more thing. So it's going off of Cliff, what you were saying about that sort of looking at the instruction in the classroom. And I do think it's very important to preserve our teachers' ability to teach their things. There might be some teachers that think this is fantastic to integrate technology for their course material, and that's great. And there might be some teachers that are doing other things. And I would never want a situation where a teacher was under fire or being you know, sort of talked about formally or informally to be like, well, this one doesn't use technology as good as this one. I would be very concerned from a teacher perspective in protecting their ability
Yes.
to teach their material without judgment and feedback from masses.
We actually added a specific line that there is no right or wrong answer to these questions, in the, the leadership team reviewed the survey this morning
Yeah.
before we sent it
Yeah,
out.
I would want to preserve the teacher's ability to teach their class the way it makes sense to them, and
Yep.
we're not opening that up for
Yep.
all sorts of other feedback. And then John and Donna and anyone that worked on it with you in JGMS, thank you for that. I think this was like a very rapid response to something that has been, you know, elevating, and applaud your efforts for what you're doing. So, and let us know if there's anything we can do to help you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Angel.
Hello. Apologies for my late arrival, but I was listening, so that's good. So I just had a couple quick questions. My first question has to do about Lightspeed and the portal. I'm assuming is it web based or is it an app?
I think there might, I know that it's web-based, I don't know if there's an app or not yet, but that's part of what we're figuring out.
I guess I don't know if this is again our world of surveys or what, but I think we need to make sure that families have the ability to get to it, right? If you don't have a computer and
I'm
that's
gonna
web-based,
ask right now.
right? Or maybe your family doesn't have a computer or an iPad, and you've got to be able to like get on the Chromebook to be able to do it. But if you're at work, right, the scenario you're talking about, if you're at work and you're not there, right, then that leaves kind of a disconnect in your abilities to be able to use it. So I just think we need to do some work to just make sure we understand what the right. But if it's on a phone, we're gonna make. I mean, I saw a crazy stat recently that was something like 90 something.
Oh, Donna's gonna answer that question, I think, maybe.
Okay, great.
Now, let me just clarify. We're assuming some electronic device, whether it be a laptop or a desktop or a phone, right? This is just maybe my inability to understand. Like, even if it's web-based, it can work on a phone. It just may not.
Sometimes it depends on. Again, it's one of those things you want to find out. Like, is it optimized for mobile, like, or not? Right. That is a huge difference. Like, some things say, yeah, you do get a browser on your phone, but that does not necessarily mean that the website you're visiting is optimized for mobile.
Donna, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yep. Do you know if there's a phone app for the Lightspeed Parent Portal right now?
I do not know whether or not there is a phone app, but folks that use it do need to create an account and log in online to Angel's point, but I'll get back to you on whether or not you can do so on a phone. I'm assuming you can, but I don't know that answer for sure.
Yeah, I guess the secondary question to ask is just, is it an optimized for mobile, right? If that's basically the question you want to ask, and if they say yes, then it has a phone like version, right? That was fine, that people should be able to follow.
I've got to guess that if they don't have one, there would be customer demand for one, and they'll develop one, and maybe I'll ask them too if they don't have one. So,
yeah, thank you. So again, yeah, just from an equity perspective, just making sure we understand that. I'm kind of interested in how you plan to measure if this is successful. Really, I think that this is a.
Did you hear? Maybe you were walking in when we are implementing a distractibility survey.
I did not hear that part because that's what I was probably going to.
So we're going to administer a baseline next week to capture teacher sentiment on how distracted students are, and then we'll be able to re-administer it in the fall and periodically to get a sense of that. We also, you might have been in transit, we're working on the ability to measure screen time, right, specifically, but that again is not necessarily technologically easy as you would think it would be. Just like if you can go into your browser history, you can see sort of sequentially where you went, but not necessarily how long you were spending time there. So the tech team, Vlad, our information systems director is on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that if you want to pay money, you can certainly
that is
track
part,
it, right?
That is part of the, there's
Right,
an
but that's-
upgrade, I think, that we might have to purchase for Lightspeed and an upgrade on Google Suite, right, that we were talking about. So we're trying to explore that this summer to make sure it's worth, the juice is worth the squeeze.
Right.
So.
Sorry, I don't even know what I wrote here and what this means. I guess my other piece of this is what kind of, I heard you say like everything's gonna be once school starts, right? Because you've got to put kind of some training plans together. You have to do both for students, for the schools. I think for the parents, I'm interested to kind of see what that's going to look like, right? I think we have a lot of different languages and comforts with technology, and right. So I think just it's gonna have to be a really thorough and thought out kind of process to make sure that we're capturing everyone, so everyone has the same opportunity to be able to kind of implement this in some way. I guess the only other thing I wanted to ask about this, I lost it. Sorry about this. Wendy asked some good questions, so I'm like trying to skipping the ones that I already had here. All right, I'm gonna let it.
You can always
if
come
it
back.
comes back to me, I
Yeah.
might just ask her again because I don't have it written here, and I'm trying to remember what it was. So.
All right, Brad.
Echo the thank yous and kudos. A job well done so far. It sounds like there's still a bunch to do. Just a couple of quick questions. So we've been talking about this in a lot of different ways. So a parent will have access to the Google Classroom any way as long as they can get on to the internet. Is that going to be correct, or do they have to go through a Chromebook?
So right now, what can be promised is
Yeah.
a parent can speak to their child, say, hey, show me your Google
Okay.
Classroom.
Okay.
Or give me your login credentials, I'm gonna look myself. That has always been in play, right? And if that's the access that they have, they're gonna be able to see everything here as we described.
Okay.
Now, as we look into this sample and we work through this free sample and we recognize that there are other, what's the word?
Ways
Platforms?
to access.
Yeah, you're right, just, yes, good things about the app, the program that allow a parent to have quicker access to that without having to wrestle their kid, right? Because I think there are some students who are like, oh, I left my Chromebook at home, sorry, or, no, I'm not showing you my Chromebook, and the parent is now fighting, like, we don't want that, right? And that's maybe a low percentage, but it's just, it's too much. We don't want any of our families fighting with their children over this, or anything really, but at least something that we can control.
So okay.
So we're
Right
looking
now-
we're looking
So there's a
into
lot of
that.
possibilities we
Yeah,
haven't
right.
yet. That's fine. Okay.
But I think for me, it's important to point out, like, the bare minimum is like status quo, right? Like, you can ask your kid for the agenda book if they're a type of kid who uses their agenda book, and that's been the case for years. And you can ask your kid to look at the Chromebook, and you can actually, I think at work, I'm at work, my kid wants their Chromebook access, I can check and confirm they actually have homework.
Well, the reason for the question is that you said one of the problems that you're trying to solve is that kids are telling their parents they have homework and then they don't, or vice versa.
Right.
And if the parent doesn't have access to that, then it's not solving that problem.
Correct.
Right.
That's the reason.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely, and
But I think to be clear, right now, what John is demonstrating a few times is that can't happen now because teachers aren't necessarily posting their homework in the
Right.
same way. So even if we don't give parents direct access to Google Classroom, there will be an improvement in terms of communication.
And I think just getting the credentials from the child, you'll be able to do that remotely, right? You're at work, your kids at
Well, I
home.
guess I'm hesitant to say, I don't know if that violates our acceptable use policy about whether or not a kid can have their
okay,
parent,
sorry.
like, Donna, I don't know if you wanna chime in on that?
So we're working
So,
on it.
yeah.
Let me shift to a different question. So the Google Classroom calendar seems great. It looks like it works really well for training people to do work the night before it's due, which as an educator in higher education, I wish my students would not do, right? So my question really is about what is it like in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? It's been a long time for me. How often do we have assignments that are actually multi-day kinds of things
Right.
that are given,
Can you
because-
present?
Yeah,
like what your examples are basically saying, here's what's due tomorrow,
Yeah.
right?
it's both, Brad.
Well,
if
yeah,
you
that's
look
all right.
at
Just
that.
if you don't mind just showing it, so while Cliff's pulling that up, we talked about some of the norms, right?
Uh-huh.
Post it by 3 p.m., for example. And I don't want to say that's the time, right? We may change it to 3:15.
Yeah.
Due dates consistent, but also like X number of days before an assessment, right? Need to be provided. So I didn't get into every norm because I don't think we've agreed on every norm. But if you go to the next page, you'll notice that the tests. So I think we talked about maybe a minimum of 2 days before every test. So
Okay.
in this situation, let's say it's on if you actually, Cliff, go back one more, go back.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
so I
If
think I
it's,
get where
if
you're
it's
going with this.
Tuesday, I'm sorry, if it's Tuesday,
They can
I
see
know
the
there's a
rest.
test on Friday,
Yeah.
so, and I'm telling you, you have a study guide, you have homework to study for a test, and hey, the test is Friday. Like, I know on Tuesday that there's a test on Friday. And that's one of the norms that we've talked about, is making sure that these things are posted ahead of time, at least 2 days ahead of a test, or at least 3 days ahead of a test, or a paper is due.
Okay.
I think it's also a combination though, because if you're a teacher and you don't get through material and you posted the homework for the week, but now you something happened, a fire drill, you might adapt it. So I do think we're gonna have to train students and parents. You should check every day to make sure things haven't changed. But, especially as you get older in 8th grade, there are gonna be like multi-week papers, so they'll know it's due on, March 15th, but they're working on it starting in January, right? And so
Right.
it'll probably be highlighted, right? But there will be interim scaffolded steps that are updated more frequently.
I guess I'm also anticipating that there will be some variability in the way teachers are gonna be posting about things that are not just tomorrow's due assignment, right? One teacher might say, I'll say complete the study guide every night for 5 nights. Another one might say, I'm gonna do it a week before and 2 days before, or whatever else it might be. And they might be appropriate differences, or they might just be stylistic different. I don't, stylistic.
Yeah.
There might be reasons for it, and it might also just be stylistic ones. So the reader still has a lot of responsibility here. It's not like this is a good step. It's not really a work management tool, right? It's more of a notification tool, and so I guess the training needs to include the fact that people need to be looking ahead, thinking about
Yes.
what is going to do that. So,
Absolutely, and one of the things we talked about is.
I mean, we're really going with this from an educator standpoint. Is I don't like to teach people to do their work the night before it's
Of
due.
course.
Right, that is a bad skill.
Right.
Now, that's more important when you're a senior in high school than when you're a 5th grader, but or a 6th grader. But I just want to.
But if you don't mind, like that, we explicitly spoke about that, and we're gonna come back to it at least 2 days or 3 days announcing a test. Now, some might put it up there a week ahead of time, right? But in this example, and this is just a couple classes I created just to give an example, yes, the homework is to complete the study guide, right? And that is now scaffolding it for the children, because there is a test on Friday. Everyone knows there's a test on Friday. But I want you on Tuesday night to study, to complete the study guide. On Wednesday, we're gonna do something in class. And on Wednesday night, I want you to study. Now, I'm not explicitly telling you to study for the test on Thursday night. I'm telling you there's a test on Friday. We've done all the studying, right? So now I guess it's up to the child, right, to decide how much studying they need to do on Thursday night. So this example, I purposely didn't say the homework for what's due Friday is not to study for the test on Friday, right? What's due on Wednesday is to study for the test. What's due on Thursday is to study the test. So that is something we've explicitly spoken about, because I do want to be clear, like that wasn't something that we just didn't think of.
And I think educationally, what's important is that the team structure in 6th grade is explicitly designed, in the middle school, is explicitly designed to transition kids from an elementary self-contained model to high school. So in 6th grade, you're gonna expect more scaffolding in terms of daily assignments. And gradually up through 8th grade, you're gonna expect more extension and thinking ahead, and maybe more variety. But part of the purpose of the team model is to not make the students or the parents have to figure out 5 different methods that aren't consistent. To, I think, Wendy, your point before, I do think a lot of people would love this in high school too. But there is a little bit of developmental growth there where we don't want by senior year for kids to still have to rely on something that they need to start populating this for themselves, right? Maybe in 9th grade, there's a bridge, like a little bit more consistency that the 9th grade teachers talk about. But I think if you're still doing this in high school, farther into high school, you're actually doing a disservice to kids in terms of the developmental executive function that they need for higher education and beyond. But it's gonna change from 6 to 12. What I think we identified through this process is that we were expecting 6th and 7th and 8th graders to functions similar to high schoolers in some ways because of the different varieties of the way that things were communicated. So there needs to be an intentional commitment and a developmental sort of approach to the release of responsibility for executive function to students. So I think we're gonna have a similar conversation with the high school because the Lightspeed portal is gonna apply to the high school too. But I think the controls that parents, in my opinion, should be implementing shouldn't be as tight if you really want, right, your kid to get ready for higher ed.
Can I
Great,
just jump
thank
in
you.
here real
Yeah,
quick
sure.
before you move on, only because
Yeah.
I couldn't see this on my phone well, and now that I see it, I just were there any conversations with students about the way this is laid out?
Not yet, there will be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as no one's, at first glance, to me, like, this is super confusing. Cause and at least with the example you said, to me, I would expect to see like the work I need to do on Tuesday
Yeah.
be on Tuesday,
Yes.
and it'd be, right, like, and
Yes.
the way this is laid out to me is,
There is gonna be a little, there is gonna be a little bit of like shifting, like Tuesday night, it's like right now, Wednesday night, your homework is not to study for the homework, that was due. So it's really about, well, due dates are a really important piece, and you could take out the due date.
But it's a vestige, right now, the conversation on the team
Right.
is the due date time should be 7:30 in the morning. And that is because of the notion that some kids might wanna wake up early and do the homework. There could be a discussion over the summer to say that's too confusing, if the cutoff should be 10 PM the night before, right? That will pressure test some other parental feelings about what if my kid has a sports game and I say that they can stay up to do it, right? So, by flipping it past 11:59, it shows up on Wednesday, right? So, if you want the consistency of the technology, right, you have to make
it's
some
a function
decisions.
of using the calendar in this
Yes.
way, that for you to
Yes.
say that this thing is
Yes.
going to happen.
Yes,
it
and
makes it
just to give you
appear-
some texture about how robust this conversation was, at one point, the preferred option was a Google Doc that had one page per team that had the homework for the night before. To Brad's point, is it always gonna be the night before? Then is it a weekly thing? And then the teachers have to post it in Google Classroom and then update a Google Doc manually. And then you will introduce error into that. And if a kid is writing it down in the agenda, then there's a third way to introduce error. So right now, we're trying to do it native to the teacher post to the classroom, right? And that there's no translation manual entry, but we still have to make sure it's understandable. And to your point, I think we'll have to train students to say, okay, on Tuesday night, you're gonna look on the Wednesday, right? What's due on Wednesday, and train parents to do that too. But I had the same thought,
too.
but the 11:59 has other problems, right? So this is why, as I've told many parents who have talked to me, we need more time to be thoughtful about this, because pulling the plug on something or implementing something like this rashly doesn't allow us to work through those issues. So maybe we can get some feedback from
Yeah. If I
Ryan
can be
here
clear,
about what you would prefer, but like maybe some student focus groups, you know.
I think most teachers aren't gonna like dock a kid if they turn it in at 12:01 AM, right? Or even because the due date it was arbitrary in a sense, like a 10 PM deadline, right? That the spirit of that, right, is that the next morning it's there, right? And I think what we need to be clear on as the spirit of this is that by school start time, like, you should be done, right? Because you're not gonna be doing your homework in your A period class because you have A period class. Brad, I'm sorry.
That's all right, no worries.
Angela, I'm sorry,
I guess
you-
my.
No, that's fine. Like,
Okay,
yeah, I mean,
okay.
I kind of understand from a technology perspective why it shows up that way. I just, it's not obvious when you look at this.
We had training.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be another component to the training piece.
Which leads me to my question. Why are we inventing this wheel? I don't understand why this is something that has to be homegrown. This seems like a universally middle school problem all around the country, possibly the world.
You would think, but as we're learning, for example, there was no model acceptable use policy. Donna had to work on that. And I think,
Well, but the calendar part of it.
no, I know, but the calendar is not new, but I think the consistent usage, there probably are schools out there that have figured this out, but
Alright.
you know,
Oh, and I'll
I
say
do
that
have
there-
I have hot off the press answer to prior question. There is not a app, but the mobile version of the website is optimized for mobile.
Okay, thank you.
And my other completely different kind of a question here. Do our policies have anything to say about AirPods, headphones, things that people wear, wearable devices?
So they shouldn't be wearing them.
They should not be wearing.
Correct.
AirPods.
Yeah, and the
That's
fact that we're-
explicit in our.
So I'm happy you're saying this, because now I'll say it's not just a JGMS thing. I'm guessing and hoping you're saying they shouldn't have their earbuds in unless given permission. Is that
Well,
right?
I was asking, that would be my answer to the
Yes,
question, but I
good.
wanna know what the actual policy.
No, the
is.
policy is you're not supposed to have your headphones on. I think I looked at our handbook, I'm
Okay.
99% sure it's there.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's a big deal, it's just in my ear. Well, I don't know, maybe your phone is in your pocket and I
Yeah.
can't see it. And you're listening to music, right? Like, that's the piece.
You want me to quote the district
Please,
handbook that you
yes,
just
thank you.
approved? To support student-focused learning, privacy, and safety, students are expected to use personal electronic devices only in accordance with school rules and staff direction. Personal electronic devices may include cell phones, smartwatches, earbuds, headphones, tablets, laptops, gaming devices, and other internet-enabled or communication-capable devices. Our schools establish age-appropriate expectations for when and where personal devices may be used, stored, or restricted during the school day as outlined below. What is outlined below? It starts to refer to the acceptable use policy. I don't know if we have hard and fast, but we definitely give our the
What would happen
permission.
if I walked in as a sixth grader to JGMS tomorrow and was wearing AirPods?
We would ask you to take them off.
Okay.
And typically you would comply, because
Uh-huh.
we have a pretty good kid, we have a situation where kids comply. If they argue with us, we communicate with parents, and we take away the electronic device, and they pick it up just like our cell phone policy. I mean, I was listening and then I got distracted, but the point is, it's not like you're not allowed to, right? There are situations where we need a student who has hearing, whatever, to wear earbuds. We have kids who walk around with phones for medical reasons. And like, there are classes in which your kid needs to get the earbuds because they're listening to a video on the computer or whatever. So, now at times our kids then leave the class with their earbud in their ear, and sometimes they forget it's there. Oh yeah, no problem, they put it away. But for the most part, like, there really is no reason for a kid to be wearing their headphones or their earbuds. And I don't.
So
I
the
mean,
norm and the expectation is no.
absolutely,
That's what I
yeah.
get.
I mean, Mr. Botchgalupi is on top of that for sure.
Is that also true at the high school?
I would say that the high school is a little, because cell phones are allowed. So the law may change that, but that is, I don't think there's the enforcement consistency is a lot harder because they actually have access to their phones like a lot, right? Which
Right.
is something where Principal Camaro and I will be talking about when she gets here.
I think it's important, like, when we ask a student, like, why can't I wear my earbuds? Why are you wearing them? Right? I like them in my ear. So you're not listening to anything. Okay, then you don't need them, right? Like, I haven't run into a parent who's disagreed with me. So, and if they're listening to music, well, you're not supposed to be listening to music because it's on your phone, and like, it's not a thing, right? So give me the earbud, take them off, or give them to me, right? And they typically take them off and put them away. And, so
Good,
Yeah.
okay, thanks, I'm done.
All right, every question I could have possibly asked has been asked at this point. And I just remind everyone, we have a lot of agenda items to go and an executive session, just to not curtail, but remind. I just wanted to clarify, it's device and charger are school-owned devices. Because I
Yes.
received the email from Mr. B, it was very clear, chargers are part, and I think it's just
Yes.
something that isn't mentioned, that device comes with a charger, it's returned with a charger.
yes, thank you for everyone listening. And we're gonna
Find those chargers.
We're gonna, you know what? And for the most part, I think they know where they are because they're charging at home.
Yeah, otherwise.
I mean, we do have charging stations and stuff at school. So I have found that for the most part, they remember their chargers. And some won't, but we'll be more explicit. I'm gonna mention it to the kids in our video bulletin on Thursday. Just don't forget, bring in your charger. Like, this is important. And hopefully we don't have a lot of lost chargers. So,
Fingers crossed. I like this. I'm glad that it meets the 4 primary goals, at least in my mind. This initiative does a very good job of meeting the goals that everyone has made for this. So kudos for that. I do think also this does strike a nice balance of teaching kids how to navigate a digital world and responsible decision making. And I like that we're collecting them in the summer. I like that it's letting families have some control over their home, the device at home, because I think there was a disconnect with, I'm not giving my kid a phone, but the school's giving them a Chromebook.
Right.
And it addresses that problem in a hopefully sufficient way.
Yes.
So I have no questions. Thank you for all of the work on it, Donna. You too.
Yeah, I
everyone
do want to
involved.
thank Principal Hartunian, Donna, Vlad, and the whole project program director and team leader, team, and all the teachers. This was a very robust process, so.
Yeah, and I will say, our teachers were like ready to act. It's just a matter of how, right? They weren't all in agreement as to how, but they all understood that this was important, this was critical, and that we needed to do something. So the staff came together and we were able to align on the most important pieces to meet to solve the problems that we had. And that, to me, is like really, really wonderful. And then just model collaboration all around, including parents too. So everyone was patient, which.
Yes.
And it was quick, so there's
Yeah.
a path forward
Yeah.
very quickly. So
I just want
thank
to
you.
ask one last quick question.
Sure.
And just, but if it was answered, tell me and I'll go listen to the report later, but just, did anybody either talk about whether or not there's like some exploration about reducing kind of the reliance on the technology within the curriculum?
That is part of the work for next year. What I was unwilling to do was to basically pull the rug out from teachers and say, spend the summer redesigning all of your curriculum. Right.
Okay, got it, thank you.
But also to Sheila's point, like, I don't know if you said it way better than I did,
Some things are.
but our teachers, some of our teachers are using it. The ones that are using it are really using it to enhance greatly the learning that is happening.
Yeah.
And that can't be ignored. But what we need to do is ensure that when we're using it, learning is happening. And when we're not using it for learning, then we're putting it away, so we're not distracted.
And that the teachers have the ability to make that decision for themselves in their classroom with their course content, because all things, there shouldn't be an expectation, in my opinion, in K-12 and higher education to be like, every class must do this and do all their stuff. There are some classes that just don't lend themselves to that for a whole bunch of reasons, and we need to honor the role of our teachers, that what they're in, right? So we had a conversation, Angel, earlier about, are we gonna allow parents to view what's going on in the classroom, how much time they're spending and what they're doing?
Right.
And that, I think, is a very slippery slope and somewhat dangerous,
Yeah.
right? As Cliff had said, in a public school system. Maybe in a private school, you can demand that. I think in a public school system, that is a very huge problem that we need to let our teachers teach in their classrooms.
Thank you,
All right.
John.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Donna, feel free to log off. I think your work is done here. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, moving on to our next agenda item. That would be special.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah, bye, John. Yeah, so I think
Oh, here,
we're.
let me, I
Oh,
haven't
sorry.
read it. That's okay. Special Education Stabilization Fund transfer request filed DIBA Town of Bedford Reserve Policy Special Education Reserve Fund. Superintendent Schwang and Julie Corinne, Director of Finance.
So Julie is online, but this is the final piece of our closeout of the fiscal '26 budget. This is the first time we are actually accessing the Special Ed Stabilization Fund. If you recall, last year we went to the Finance Committee for a reserve fund transfer because the size of the amount would have cannibalized a lot of the fund, although when all was said and done, we could have actually done it through that mechanism, but we wanted to preserve the balance. So these are the steps outlined in the policy. The first step being that the school committee must approve a request. After tonight, assuming your approval, we will transmit this to the Finance Committee for their review. Finance Committee, it is a consultation with the Finance Committee, and then it goes to the Select Board, currently scheduled for Monday the 15th for their vote the double vote is required to actually withdraw and transfer money. We are asking for authority to use up to a maximum of $250,000 from the stabilization fund. If you recall, our goal last year was to keep it under $350,000. I have unfortunately bad news that we learned earlier today that the legislature did not follow through on the state's commitment to fully fund the circuit breaker transportation reimbursement for fiscal '26. We were expecting $100,000 at the end of this year. Like last year, we got I forget exactly how much it was. However, I'm told that they are committed to fully funding it in FY27. And I believe, Julie, you can confirm we did not assume full funding next year, so that will help us.
That's correct.
Yeah. So we are probably going to need to draw close to that $250,000. We were hoping to be in the 100,000s because of that last minute reimbursement, but that's not coming through. The balances that yield the $250,000 surplus is sorry, not surplus, deficit is in the chart on the back of the memo. We have up to almost $400,000 eligible expenses, but given our cost controls, we have about $150,000 from operating budget savings that we can apply against that larger deficit. So the remainder gap is up to $250,000. So we're asking for your approval to execute that transfer in conjunction with the town to close out the fiscal year.
Great, thank you. We'll go around. Wendy,
Just voting, right?
do you have any
Or
questions?
no, I don't have any questions right now.
Angel.
Just a quick question, remind, at town meeting, they approved to like fully refund
The current balance at town meeting, they approved our request to add another $300,000 to the fund. So the fund balance is $950,000. So we'll be using up to $250,000. So we'll have about $700,000 left.
I'm assuming like whatever doesn't get used just goes back into the fund?
Yes, we won't actually take it out. So Julie and Alrigo, the finance director, will determine that exact amount and pull out,
What we-
243 or
Got it.
whatever.
Okay, that was my only question, thank you.
Angel, it's not a fund that closes out, it rolls over from year to year and the balance is maintained.
So, thank you.
Thanks, Julie.
Sheila, no questions.
Brad.
Yeah, I just want to, anticipating the question the others will ask, just a reminder, what is the underlying cause of the overrun in out-of-district contractual services? And my question is it more driven by more needs, or is it more driven by higher prices?
Julie?
Does that question make sense? The way
I
you're
think
asking?
so, but I'm going to defer to our expert to answer that question.
So I would say the reason for the cost overrun has more to do with unknown expenses that have been come to the district in this year that were not known at the point of budgeting. But in terms of the general cost pressure, the answer is both. Both high needs, transitions to higher levels of placement and care, and also I'm sorry, I lost my
Okay.
train of thought there, but what you said.
Yeah, okay, so there's, got it, okay. What is the assumption we make in our budgeting process about a change in the number of people from year to year? Like, do we do a specific,
Student by
like in
student.
this case, what we're saying is there's some surprises.
Yes.
And is our assumption we're gonna have zero surprises?
No.
Want to make the budget, or how have we been doing?
We do a student by student tracking. Julie, Mariana, and me monthly
Okay.
to update the tuition, the likelihood of outplacement, the likelihood of coming back, the likelihood of graduation. And then we do our very best to include placeholders given our
Okay.
estimate of trends. But I'll give you an example. Yesterday, a student moved into town that will require some significant additional resources. This will be for
So the
fiscal 27.
placeholders are not zero. The
No.
placeholders, okay. So this is actually a surprise that is bigger than the placeholders. Is
Not
that what
really,
I'm-
because a little bit,
Just saying,
except,
yes.
well, but we forecast for you all that we would probably need up to $350,000 of this when you approve the budget. So this is within the tolerance of what we thought was potential.
I see what you're saying.
Right, because when you
Okay.
approved the budget last year, we were very clear that we would need to rely on up to
If the
$350,000.
placeholders came to fruition,
Yeah.
they would need to spend $350. I see what
Yeah.
you're saying. Okay. All right. I just think we need to be prepared to explain
Yeah,
it. to people.
but I want to remind the committee, and this is not a theoretical, the swings, and I hit this note very hard in my first year, but the swings can be upwards of $1 million, and we actually are working and anticipating of a swing of that nature, luckily not for fiscal 27, but the community needs to be very clear that someone can move into town with multiple children, with multiple needs, and it can be extraordinarily expensive. So that is why I've repeatedly said that the size of the stabilization fund is not large enough to actually contain the level of swings we've seen in fiscal 24 and fiscal 25, which is why we need to continue to, fill it every year if we
Or
can.
we adopt the Burlington model.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Great. All right, thank you. That, you answered my question.
All right, thank you. No, this makes sense. When do we go in front of the select board?
Next Monday.
Is that next Monday? Okay, so it does, is the procedure that the select board approves and
Yes.
then
Then the authorization to
then
execute.
it
is-
happens?
yeah.
Okay, that's it. May I hear a motion in accordance with policy GIBA? The school committee votes to approve a request to transfer up to $250,000 from the Town of Bedford Special Education Reserve Fund to the school department operating budget as presented, and authorizes the superintendent or designee to transmit the request to the finance committee and select board for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Brad has moved, Sheila has seconded, roll call vote, Wendy.
Yes.
Angel.
Yes.
Sheila.
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
I'm a yes, 5-0, the motion passes. All right. Moving on, it is the update on fiscal year 27 non-aligned staff cost of living adjustment, Superintendent Chong.
So this is just an update, no vote is required. We made a structural shift from prior years. Instead of budgeting for foreseen cost of living adjustments for non-aligned staff, those who are not represented by collective bargaining units, we just embedded that into the salary projection and budget that was approved by the committee. So we no longer have to transfer officially something from a school committee reserve to cover those. But I thought it helpful to just make sure that the committee was aware of our approach to these non-collectively bargained cost of living increases. Like last year, I am planning to offer a standard COLA increase of 3.25%, which aligns with what the teachers have for their third year. I want to remind the committee and the community that non-aligned staff do not get the benefit of steps and lanes, however. So as I indicated last year, I do think we may need to consider a departure from just lining up with the teacher COLA to avoid salary collisions and upward pressure. But for now, it looks like we will be able to continue to hold. As with last year, there are a handful of staff that I'm in conversations with regarding market adjustments to ensure that we retain valued staff and to also make sure that they aren't passed by non-aligned staff in relevant comparison categories. And as with last year, the 5 non-aligned members of the facilities team, which are shared with the town, that approach is slightly different because it has to align with the town's administration and the COLAs that Matt is also doing for the town. So that will not be the exact same 3.25%. All of these adjustments remain within the approved FY27 budget for these salaries. In fact, we have some running room as a result of some turnover savings. That's it.
Great, all right, we'll go around if anyone, again, no vote is needed, just if you have any questions. Wendy.
No questions.
Angel.
No questions.
Sheila.
No questions.
Brad.
No questions.
I also have no questions, so we will move on. Thank you, Cliff. All right, next is the fiscal year 26 superintendent goals and 2024 to 2027 BPS strategic plan year 2, year-end progress report, June 2026. Superintendent Schwang.
So has been my practice for the last 2 years, I'm providing a, it should say June, not January. Typos. I thought I had fully eliminated typos, sorry. I provided you a mid-year update in June. This is the end of your update. There is a full report that used a similar format with the red, yellow, green indicators. We were able to turn some of the yellows to green, none of the greens turned yellow or red. There are a few initiatives that due to transitions and other factors we weren't able to complete and will extend into the next year. One of those being the technology guidelines, which were something we were trying to do both the acceptable use policy and technology guidelines this year. One of the others, sorry. Given the transition at the high school, for understandable reasons, some of the projects that Dr. Williamson was charged with needed to take a little bit of a slower track. Pretty much everything else we checked off tonight, some of the key things. The theme that I chose, as you know, I've noticed my habit is to find some cool pictures of our students to sort of put on the cover. I didn't have a presentation tonight on this, is up, up, up. We're going up, and some very high jumping children here, two BHS seniors. I find that a very fun part of writing these reports. So If you have any questions, my goals themselves were predicated on addressing the feedback that you provided me last year at this time. And the second goal, as it was the prior year, was to execute on every element of the strategic plan as outlined in the year 2 action plan. You have the full report.
Great.
Any questions?
All right, thank you. We'll go on for questions. Just as a reminder, our next agenda item is somewhat related to this agenda item, so we will have a discussion on the evaluation. So if it does involve Superintendent Schwank's evaluation, we should probably save it for the next agenda item. Starting with you, Wendy.
I'm trying to think if I had anything. I've read over this probably 4 times. I don't think I had any. Let me see. Let me make sure. I think it was all pretty consistent. Yeah, so I don't have any questions right now.
Angel.
I think I would ask that, on 1.1, that assessment and plan for the transition for CKLA between late and 6th grade really be prioritized. I'm a little concerned, not a lot concerned, maybe a little concerned, right, that we're missing a mark of, like, that's the next, right, if we really wanted this to be a home run, that's a key component, I think, to making sure that these students then carry forward some of this new knowledge and new process, and if we're not, right, if we're just dropping it once they get to 6th grade, which I know is, you know, an oversimplification, but I wanna make sure that, right, there's a much more seamless transition to what's happening. So if we can find a way to make sure that that's a high priority, I think it's be important.
Any of the yellows, you should count on seeing appearing as a, action step for next year, unless I give you a really good explanation about why we're not pursuing it, but that is the plan.
Do you have, I noticed you're using the kind of MCAS as a benchmark. It seems like the 5th grade is well above, or, at least above the benchmark. I was wondering if there's any data or anything can be shared about why the 4th grade didn't quite get there, right? Like, is it just do teachers feel it's a CKLA problem? Do you think it's why didn't we hit that mean, right?
I would say that the difference between 53 and 55 is, relatively minor. I don't think this is a 1-year snapshot from the first year of CKLA, so everything's lagged. So next fall, we should have a better sense of if there's something particularly off with grade 4. But grade 4 is where we have historically had more challenge with the writing. That was something we identified my first year. So I would have to check with the team about whether there's additional insight on that. But that's definitely going to be a priority in the fall in terms of the multi-year analysis, now that we have 2 years of CKLA under our belt.
Got it. And I think that was it. Yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila.
No, thanks for the presentation of this. The visual docs really helps. And I think you've done a great job this year of updating us through different parts. Since we just voted on it, you can change that yellow dot to a green dot on initiative 3.3. So yay for another green dot.
Oh,
It's on page 11.
Except I was being honest because the tech guidelines aren't going to be done.
Yeah.
So that's the yellow.
All right.
I expected you were going to approve the AP.
That's it.
Thanks, Brad.
Yes, thank you so much. Good, great progress. Can you just say a little bit about the universal breakfast? What is?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're asking about the
I'm
why we
looking at
didn't
goal,
get
it's
quite
under-
the stretch goal
yeah,
under
yeah,
2.
Yeah. And you say it's going to do it. You're going to implement it next year, right?
Yeah, we were almost there, but there are logistical challenges at Davis School in terms of really making sure it doesn't impact instruction. So we had been working all year, but in the fall, we will be implementing that fully at all.
How is that funded?
That is through the federal reimbursements.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. No, I share everyone's comments. I like the format. I like the color coding. I like the pictures, dogs included. I think it's
I couldn't
great.
help myself on that one.
I saw the dogs.
That's great.
You got to look for them.
So I think this is wonderful. I think one of your strengths is that being self-reflective, and I think that reflects that. So I have no particular questions as it relates to the strategic plan.
Great,
So thanks. You for your effort putting this together. We don't have a vote on that, but moving on to the next agenda item, which is the fiscal year 26 superintendent evaluation and vote. This is my item. So I'm just gonna read the cover memo for context. On September 9th and 18th, 2025, we approved both the 2024 to 2027 BPS Strategic Plan 2025 to 2026 Year 2 Action and Superintendent Schwang's corresponding fiscal year 26 superintendent goals. This year, we have enhanced the superintendent evaluation process after careful consideration of stakeholder feedback, extensive discussion at our March 9th meeting, and consultation with legal counsel. In particular, we have incorporated additional stakeholder input, including direct feedback from members of the leadership team who report directly to the superintendent when considering our assessment of the superintendent's performance against the DESE model rubric. In addition, as chair, I had the opportunity to consult with Superintendent Schwang for his feedback prior to finalizing the evaluation. We will have, all right, there we go. So we have the evaluation. I believe this is available to everyone. I'm just going to go over the 4 generalized categories, and I'll lead by saying they're all proficient, which is where the rating that I aggregated from all of our individual data. The narratives reflect not only our thoughts, but again, as indicated in the cover memo, thoughts of some of the superintendent's direct reports, which I was able to put into the narrative this year. And then if you turn to the end of the evaluation, there's a short overall summary, which I will read, which states Superintendent Schwang demonstrates strong instructional leadership, fiscal stewardship, and a deep commitment to equity, cultural responsiveness, and data-informed decision-making. He is highly visible across schools and extremely hardworking, supports rigorous curriculum and instruction, and fosters inclusive learning environments while effectively engaging families and community stakeholders through transparent and consistent communication. He maintains strong support by many in district leadership roles. His strengths are particularly evident in strategic planning, ethical and policy expertise, and thoughtful use of data to guide district priorities and improvement efforts. While overall performance is strong, continued attention to communication in certain settings, meeting efficiency, and strengthening staff cohesion and conflict management will further enhance district-wide effectiveness and trust. That said, everyone's feedback has been incorporated into this evaluation as well as my own. So we'll go around once in case anyone would like to highlight anything areas that were important to you. Wendy.
I think I was going through it. This was really hard for me. So since I just came in March, and I was like, I followed all of these meetings for so long, but it is different when you're on the side of the table. And I want to thank Sarah for kind of helping me just understand the rubric a little more before I had my course in this. But thank you for your help in providing all the documents to help understand more. I think the communication piece will be huge, and I know that's noted in here. And connecting with the families and making sure that that relationship is repaired, because I know this past year has been really hard on the entire community and yourself. So I think that's going to be a really big thing to hone in on. And I love the one of the sections over here, getting feedback from staff. I think that's excellent, because then you can see how everyone's feeling, and I really hope staff utilizes that tool to give feedback and tell what's going well, what's a challenge. So I really appreciate you implementing that. But I think that's all I have to say. Thank you guys for all of your hard work.
Thank you. Angel.
I guess one of the things I just wanted to highlight is that I appreciate taking strides to kind of correct isn't the word I'm looking for, but rectify kind of what we said needed improvement from last year to this year, right? I think that again shows a level of self-reflection that's important, and I think that is something you consistently do, and people know the community, right, that you I think take that feedback to heart and then action it, right, which I think is an important skill for anybody in a position like yours. I also would like to highlight something that Sarah mentioned that I kind of informally also talked to some folks like within the district to just that again are direct reports. And I think right the what you've set up for them in order to aspire to and set their goals and things like that that were a little bit different than I think what they were used to in the past is a kind of a good trajectory for the way the central office right can kind of be a cohesive, more of a cohesive unit. So kudos for that, and that's what I got for now.
Great, thank you. Sheila?
Great, thanks. And thank you, Sarah, for pulling this all together. Cliff, thank you for all of your work within the district this past year. I think every year presents its probably unique set of challenges, from budget to staffing to everything. And this certainly has been, I would consider, an extraordinary year. Being the parent of a high school student, there was a lot going on with the high school this year. And I appreciate the care that you took to put stable leadership in place with Dr. Williamson, and really, as students were processing some of the changes, you outreached and invited feedback in and set up opportunities to hear them. And that is, in my opinion, a great mark of a leader, right? So I wanted to publicly acknowledge that for the different roles that I wear within our community. And likewise, I think, 2 years ago, we sat here and talked about the financial management and the budget, and it has been like night and day. So thank you to you for your leadership, and obviously support from Julie and everyone else that does that. And I really appreciate your qualitative and quantitative approach to everything that you do, right? You make it very clear that you're not a single decision maker, that you help create an opportunity to look at things from all different perspectives. And I think that is a fantastic trait as a leader, and I think we're very lucky to have you. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Brad?
I just want to echo all the sentiments of everybody. Thanks for a great year. Thanks for all the hard work that you do. I particularly want to underscore what I think has been a major accomplishment, which is to really get our sort of financial processes in order. Julie does most of the front, the where the rubber meets the road, but putting the processes and the controls in place, I think, has been really great. And so I think we're finding a way as a school committee now to which is going to be really important for us, because we still have some challenging years going into the future from a budgetary perspective. So solid work on all those things. I thought Sarah did a great job of summarizing it, and I especially appreciate that she was able to find a way to reach out and get broader input than just from amongst the five of us. I think that's really helpful, and we should try to build on that going forward. So great.
Thank you. I agree with everything said. Just one thing before I turn to the evaluation is I found it extremely worthwhile to solicit information and open myself up with no commitment to additional feedback, because there are things in here that we've acknowledged, we've discussed in great detail, that we know a lot about, and there are things where we could use more information, and it was really helpful to have people. And for example, like take 1D evaluation, which is talking about working with administrators on SMART goals and talking about communicating updates to administrators, something that those administrators can speak to in a different way. So I agree with Brad. I hope we continue to formalize and seek out that type of additional information. That said, I think this is a testament to a lot of hard work you've put in over the past couple of years. And a few things I hope to highlight are things that I think you were particularly exemplary, to use the DESE rubric word, at. And in addition to the improvements in the financial management, one thing that I think we could agree upon is that your laws, ethics, and policy, so your experience at DESE, because you came in with a slightly different trajectory, not exactly the linear path that most superintendents take, and I always thought that was going to be tremendously valuable, and it has proven to be. So you understand and are committed to compliance with laws, with school committee policies, collective bargaining agreements, ethical guidelines. I think you have a unique touch on that, which is immensely helpful as a school committee member. The other thing, which is sort of the other side of the spectrum, is your engagement with the community. And I say this as someone who has met Cliff in meetings at the turf and on the track and out on walks around the high school. Kids come up and they say hi to you and they know you, and it's a slightly different relationship than us or staff or parents, but you're present, you're there, you're known. they count on you, you're actively engaged, you're a member of our community, so we really appreciate it. And I think that for anyone reading this, you can see how much we appreciate that. So it was a pleasure to put all this together. If you have any questions, Superintendent Schwong, or want to comment on it, please, without obligation, feel free to. Otherwise, we will take a vote.
I'll just say one funny anecdote because before I went to pick up a library book and I'd forgotten my library card, and the one person at the desk was like, "If you have your driver's license," like, I forgot that too. And then the other person was like, I showed them she's like, "He's good. We know who he is." So I guess
You're known, and you should be known in a community like Bedford. So that said, may I hear a motion that the school committee approve Superintendent Schwang's fiscal year 26 evaluation as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Sheila has moved, Brad has seconded. Roll call vote. Wendy.
Yes.
Angel.
Yes.
Sheila.
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
I am a yes, 5-0.
thank you.
You are welcome. All right, superintendent report. Superintendent Schwang.
It is 9:02. Should I stretch it to exactly 9:12?
I'll do it for you.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
So yes, I just have a few things to note. I appreciate, first of all, the feedback and the engagement and the recognition of what I do think was a pretty tough year. So thank you very much. I'm very honored to continue to work on behalf of this committee and this community. But as Brad had said, there are still challenges ahead of us, and I just want to note that even though we approved a budget, we successfully reduced 18 and a half positions with the loss of only really one involuntary FTE worth of positions. New needs have emerged already for fiscal 27. And so I just want the committee to be aware that I'm continuing to take advantage of voluntary attrition that emerges, and there have been some last minute sort of shifts. Just be aware that I may not backfill every position as it comes open because we're still trying to manage to absorb different positions that we've added. You might recall in your last meeting, we added a K through 2 interventionist position at Davis School to help with additional challenges there. As I mentioned, there was emerging needs now for special education at the high school in terms of an individual student need, but also a co-teaching need for multiple students. And our commitment, as I've said from the get-go, is to ensure that we always meet student needs. We will figure it out. But that also means that when vacancies appear, we're gonna have to manage and expectations in terms of our ability to backfill every position. So I just want that to be on the record. We're managing to the very last minute as we look ahead to set us up for success in fiscal 27. I do have some good news to report though. From earlier this year, we had a discussion about the capital plan related to making sure that there was Wi-Fi coverage and cell reception at Lane School to ensure that our emergency management response system was fully operational. We thought that we might have to invest lots of money to address that, but then our DPW colleagues indicated that Verizon was planning to upgrade their cell tower that serves that area. And so we got an update earlier this week that they have upgraded that Verizon antenna on top of their water tower. They're still working on some final wiring, but it should be up and running this summer. So that will actually hopefully close the gap. Angel, I think you live nearby, so you can give us a sense of whether or not the reception gets better, which will allow us to then fully operationalize some of that last aspect of the safety plan. So many thanks to the DPW and the facilities team for their partnership on that. I also wanted to take a chance to acknowledge the retirements that folks that have served the district collectively for hundreds of years, who are taking leave of us this at the end of this school year. They include Charles Alperin, BHS adjustment counselor, Lil Bacchus, an AAC teacher at BHS, Margie Burke, Elaine ESP, Earl Foy, a district-wide custodian, Jerome Friedman, high school ESP, Anna Hamill Webster, a Lane reading specialist, Peter Jacob Dolan, a BHS English teacher, Karen Lual, a longtime administrator at Lane School, administrative assistant, Marie Milat, a longtime social studies teacher at JGMS, Jean Mickle, Lane ESP, long time as well, Margaret Vicarillo, another Lane ESP, and Sharmas Powell, another Lane ESP. Peter Prey, I think the longest running employee in the maintenance department at the district. Dan Terrell, a custodian at BHS, and Eileen Wagner, a art teacher at BHS. So we know these educators and staff have dedicated many, many years of service to the Bedford Public Schools, and we wish them very well. And last, I just wanted to share some closing thoughts before you do your final item. As you know, one of the ways that I express myself is through music, melody and harmony and the feelings they evoke without words. But recently, I have grown to appreciate lyrics and the deeper sentiment that can be conveyed by carefully chosen language. So tonight, I wanted to close this last meeting of the year with a few lines from the poem "To Be of Use" by Jewish American poet Marge Piercy. I shared this poem in its entirety with the Anti-Hate Bias Task Force last week, but I think it also speaks to the work of our entire school district team and this committee. Steady, persistent, deeply human, and grounded in our shared commitment to students. And so it goes like this. I love people who harness themselves an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. That is what I think our team does on behalf of our students, and I'm grateful for what we have accomplished together this year, and I look forward to continuing the work next year through the mud and muck with patience and purpose moving forward together. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Go around once. If anyone has anything to add, Wendy.
I'm so glad that you read that again because, and he didn't even go through the entire thing. At the anti-hate, anti-bias task force meeting, that it really struck a chord with me, and I've been wanting to like send it out to the previous board that I worked with for the PTO because I mean it's just so applicable. So I would encourage everyone who to go and read this poem by it's called "To Be of Use." So thank you so much.
Thank you. Angel.
Thank you for your insights and again, good job. And see you in the fall.
Sheila.
Thank you, to echo Angel, thank you for all your insights. Congratulations to all of our educators and folks that have worked and that are retiring. We appreciate your service and thank you. And we'll see you in the fall at the first school committee meeting.
Brad.
Yes, thank you. And maybe you could send a text of that poem to all of us. I'd like Wendy's suggestion to read it. It landed on me as hardworking teachers and folks who are working for the district, wading through the mud, and that perhaps part of our job is to make things a little less muddy. So that's a call to us, I suppose, to make the terrain much more navigable if we can. Thank you, and that's all I have.
Yeah.
Happy summer.
Happy summer. Thank you, Cliff.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to my final item as chair. So I thank all of you for this opportunity this year. It has been an honor to serve as chair. That said, I'm going to start at the bottom, just so I can, secretary, just so I could make it clean and handle it, right?
Okay.
Yeah. It's my last act.
Okay.
Got 2 minutes to come in at
I know,
9:12.
I'm aware, Cliff, I'm aware. All right, so we're gonna take, it's the school committee reorganization and vote. And we're gonna start with the secretary. So are there any nominations for the secretary? And I will start. I nominate Sheila Maida Green to be secretary for the 2026-2027 school year.
I second that nomination.
All right. Are there any other nominations for the position of secretary?
Would you like me to move to close nominations, or will you just?
Sure,
Or
absolutely.
will you just close them?
I will
If there are
if there are none, then I will close the nominations. I will take a roll call vote on, or I guess may I hear a motion to approve Sheila Maida Green as secretary of the Bedford School Committee for the 2026 to 2027 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Brad has moved, Angel has seconded, roll call vote, starting with Wendy.
Yes.
Angel,
Yes.
Sheila.
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
I'm a yes, 5-0. Congratulations. Thanks, Secretary. All right, moving along, may I hear any nominations for the position of Vice Chair of the Bedford School Committee for the 2026 to 2027 school year? Anyone else? No, I'm kidding, Brad. I'm just kidding. Brad.
I nominate Angel Pettit.
I second.
All right. Are there any other nominations for the position of Vice Chair? Seeing none, I will close the nomination period. May I hear a motion to approve Angel Pettit as the Vice Chair of the Bedford School Committee for the 2026-2027 school year?
So moved.
Second.
Brad has moved, Sheila has seconded, roll call vote, Wendy.
Yes.
Angel.
Yes.
All right, Sheila.
Yes.
Just
Brad.
say no.
Yes.
I'm a yes, 5-0. Congratulations, Vice Chair. All right, finally, I'm gonna open the nominations for Chair of the Bedford School Committee, and I would like to nominate Brad Morrison to be Chair of the Bedford School Committee for the 2026-2027 school year.
Second.
Wonderful. All right, may I hear a motion to approve, or I'm sorry, are there any other nominations for the role of Chair? We're gonna close this
Somebody,
one.
please.
All right, we're gonna close the nominations. May I hear a motion to approve Brad Morrison as Chair of the Bedford School Committee for the 2026 to 2027 school year?
So moved.
Second.
Sheila's moved, Angel has seconded, roll call vote, Wendy.
Yes.
Angel.
Yes.
Sheila.
Yes.
Brad.
Abstain.
I'm a yes. All right. 4-0 to 1.
Difficult.
Look at that, I got it.
No, well, you gotta do the last motion.
Oh my
Adjournment.
god, no, that's not me. All right,
Adjournment, executive session.
congratulations,
Oh.
Chair Morrison.
Well,
You can
thank
have
you,
my
thank you very
cheat
much.
sheet.
It's an honor to follow you, Chair
It's
McGinley,
okay, 9:13.
ex-Chair McGinley.
Former.
I believe we would like to adjourn, so may I have a motion to adjourn into executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy related to collective bargaining with regard to units A, B, and C, and not to reopen to the public.
So moved.
Second.
And there's a second, and we can do this by an oral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The meeting is adjourned into executive session. Happy summer, Bedford. See y'all in the fall.
Bye.
Good night, Bedford.